There is one conversation I have with every athlete before they join my coaching program. And let me tell you, when I started doing this, my results skyrocketed. Not just for my business, but for my whole coaching program overall. And if you're a youth sports coach, you can't afford to miss this step. Today, I'll show you exactly how to have a commitment conversation that sets your athletes up for success. So let's be real. Most online sports coaching programs fail for three major reasons. First, they're not structured correctly. Maybe there's no plan or clear progression for the athletes to actually follow. Second, the coach isn't responsive enough. And when athletes don't feel supported, they lose motivation fast. And third, the biggest reason is lack of commitment from the athlete themselves. This is why it's so important to have a commitment conversation up front that sets the tone for the entire coaching program. So what is a commitment conversation? Well, it's a conversation that sets expectations and builds accountability before they even start the program. Think of it as laying the foundation for success. Because if your athletes don't understand what it's going to take to actually do the program, they're more likely to quit when it gets tough. And when I started using this strategy, my athletes became more consistent, more disciplined, and ultimately more successful. Plus, the parents absolutely love it because then they leverage a third party to get them to lock down and actually do the work that the parents want them to do and the kids want to do. And it makes it super easy for the parents to reinforce it and say, well, hey, you promised Coach Bougie that you'd do it. You got to do it. And when a coach sets the expectations early, it sets the tone. It's kind of like that strict teacher that you had on the very first day of class, but then actually they were super cool. That's kind of what we're going for here, where we're setting the expectation early and hard. And when you give a kid the chance to actually own a commitment and follow through, what happens is when they do that, they build a belief that they are the person that does the thing that they said that they were going to do. And as a result, they see this outsized benefit and reward because by the end of your program, they're going to look completely different as an athlete. So here's exactly how to have a commitment conversation. Feel free to adapt this to your own style, but the key points should stay the same. So step one, we're building confidence. So say something like this. I know I can help you because I've helped hundreds, if not thousands of kids that look exactly like you. And the reason that this works is because I have the right plan. It's worked for everyone that does the plan. I have the right feedback because when you submit it to me, I'm gonna give you the right instruction. But here's the thing, I can't practice for you. Who has to actually practice? That leads us right into step number two, which is clarifying the commitment and ultimately the responsibility too. So we're gonna ask them, who has to actually do the practice? And then they'll say, I do. That's when I say, exactly. And in order to qualify for this, you gotta be able to practice 3 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes for the next 12 weeks or 4 weeks, however long your program is. Is that something that you would be willing to do? So now we're clarifying what the actual practice schedule is like. And you could have done this earlier in the call as well. But the first question that we're really trying to get to is a willing or want. So here's the expectation. Would you be willing to do that or would you want to do that? That's really that first question that we're asking. And then if they say yes, what we do is we double down. So they just said that they were willing or that they wanted to. So now we're going to double back down on actually committing to it. So here's what it would sound like. Okay, great. Is that something that you would commit to? And you can even hear in how I'm saying commit, I'm looking for a strong response. At this point, if they say, well, yeah, I think so, then I would be like, dude, that sounds like a 5 out of 10. What do you think it would take to get you to a 10 out of 10? And then they would come back, they'd be like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm in. And then I'd say, okay, let me hear you say it like you're actually in. And then they would say, okay, I'm in. Sometimes if they're young, they don't get as animated, but this is really, really effective in that like 12 to 16-year-old range. Like, man, you drop this on them, all of a sudden, there's this new level of vigor and commitment and excitement. Now, step 3, once we've clarified the commitment and gained the commitment, what we're trying to do is address the potential obstacles because anyone can make a commitment, but there's gonna be things that inevitably come up. So we want to highlight those and bring those up ahead of time. So here's what it might sound like. And notice how I lean in as I say this. So let's say we get 2 weeks in, you get busy, it gets harder to practice. What do you think is the biggest thing that's gonna stop you from still sending me videos and getting your work done? And then you let them say, well, basketball, homework, video games, whatever. And depending on what they say, sometimes I'll go down this path of, well, hey, is basketball bad? To which they'll say, no, it's not bad. And then you would say, exactly. But if you're gonna do this program, we're gonna be committed to catching, or whatever the skill is for your coaching program, for the next 4 weeks, 12 weeks, however long your program is. What would you do to make sure that you can still get your practice in and send your videos to me? Then they might come up with some ideas. One of the things that we're trying to get to here is, oh, okay, so you might want to schedule out and plan your week a little bit. Have you ever done that before? No, but sometimes my dad does. Okay, do you think maybe you guys could work on that together? Yeah. Okay, awesome. I think that's a great plan. And if they say video games, and the parents love this when you do this, by the way, you would then say, well, hey, would you be willing to sacrifice playing video games first until after you get your work done. And this is really funny. Sometimes you'll get kids that are like, oh, they like feel the weight of not being able to play video games first. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, that's easy. So it really just depends on the kid. And that leads us to step 4, which is creating a real life scenario that there could potentially be conflict in. Because especially if this is an online coaching program, their parents are gonna be the ones that are doing the work with them. So here's what I say. Okay, one more question. Let's just say that, it's been a long day, you already had school, you had basketball practice, and you even had baseball practice, but you didn't get your catching work in. And now you're sitting on the couch and you're kind of tired, and your dad comes and taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, let's go practice. What are you gonna do in that moment? And the reason that I love to ask this question is because this is oftentimes one of the biggest pain points of the parent. The reason that they're reaching out for help is 1, because they want the expertise of the coach, but 2, because they also want the trusted third party that can also speak in and hold the kid accountable and give them good feedback. But the parent's the one that's doing the work, and our goal is also to support the parent in the values and everything that they're trying to instill to help that kid not just become a better athlete, but ultimately a better person. And so this is like a relationship defining question. And if they say, well, yeah, I would get up and go, then I would especially double down and be like, okay, so you're giving full permission to your dad, like, hey, if that happens, yeah, I'll respond well and go. Because then if you have that conversation, the likelihood that that becomes a negative experience and that they stop goes significantly down because you've talked about it. And one of my favorite stories is I'm walking through this with a 8-year-old kid and his dad. They're on Zoom across from me. Dad's like up here and the 8-year-old's like down here. And so I ask him, well, hey, what would you do if he comes and taps you after a long day and says, let's go practice? And the kid goes, well, I would go because otherwise my dad would get mad. And I was like, whoa, 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 hold up. Why do you think your dad would get mad? And he goes, I don't know. And we sit there for like probably 20 seconds. And so this little kid looks up at his dad and says, well, Dad, why do you get mad? And the dad goes, well, because I love you and I want to see you succeed. And the kid just starts crying. I was like, this is the coolest job ever. I get to help facilitate these conversations that, potentially could change the trajectory of their relationship, because now they understand that a little bit more and they're working together. They have a process, they're building something together. I think there's something just really valuable about that. And so by walking through these questions, you're not just setting expectations, you're helping them to actually visualize what it's gonna be like to do the work. And this makes a huge difference in their mindset. So here are some things that you might experience on the call when you actually start to implement this commitment conversation. And by the way, where this exists is I have this on the sales call. First, parents are nodding their heads along on the call. I've seen sometimes as I go through this question run where the dad is like, oh yeah, I can see his face. He just loves it, because ultimately what the parent wants is, yes, to get better at catching or whatever sport it is, but they want the kid to grow as a person. And sometimes what that requires is it requires getting put on the hot seat, getting kind of drilled down on some questions, and then saying, yeah, I'm gonna go do it. And the parents oftentimes love this. And especially if there's any tension, which oftentimes there is, I hear this a lot with parents that will come to me, is they'll say, hey, my kid doesn't like it when I coach them. But you know who they'll listen to? They'll listen to you, because they think that you're cool, but they think that their parents are lame. And so you can use your coolness as influence to help reinforce the parent, get the kid to actually commit to doing the thing that is the best thing for them to do, and then help them to actually follow through and support them along the way. It is the coolest role that you can have. This also gives the parents a ton of confidence that you're going to be able to help their kid, and they just love this moment from what I've seen. Second, you're going to experience increased close rates, because one of the biggest concerns with an online sports coaching business is, hey, am I going to be able to actually do the work? Is my kid going to be able to stay consistent? Well, when we have this conversation, now we've said, yes, declaratively, I commit to being consistent. And so that removes that objection completely, because we just talked about it and they're going to make some changes. And I already had high closing rates, but when I implemented this, it went even higher. And the third thing that you'll experience is better results, because when the commitment is higher, the actions are higher. And when the actions are higher, the results are higher too. So if you found this helpful, send this to another sports coach and you guys can practice together actually having this conversations so that you can implement it into your sports coaching businesses. And check out this video right over here. I'm Ange Bourgeois. Let's win together.